Good morning, friends. Everybody hear me okay? A little louder? Okay, I'll do my best. So nice to see many familiar faces and old friends. I'm very glad to be here. It's a real joy. My name is Gansho, Clark Hanjian. Gansho is a given name. It means living by vow. I'm a novice priest in the White Plum lineage of Soto Zen Buddhism. I train under the guidance of Sensei Joshin Burns at Breadloaf Mountain Zen Community in Vermont. I've lived on the vineyard for almost 40 years now. I currently serve as a chaplain down at the jail. I'm also the liaison between the jail and the Island Clergy Association. And I lead a small online practice group called Beach Plum Zen. There are several Buddhist groups on the island. I'm not the leader of them. Just this one group. There's 3 others. So it's open to anybody if you're interested in a 7 a.m. Tuesday morning time. We have some meditation and a reading and some time for conversation. So beachplumzen.org, you can find it that way. As many of you know, my folks are Armin and Vicky. They're both United Methodist ministers. I grew up in the church. I went to college and studied philosophy and religion, went right to seminary, thinking I was going to become ordained as a Methodist minister as well. And right around that time, I started learning about Buddhist practice. And so ever since then, bit by bit, my practice has developed in that area. For my gratitude to the worship committee, Barbara and Linda especially, for welcoming me here today, to Reverend Janet for her leadership in this community, and also to each of you and to everybody on Zoom as well, just for your presence and your attention to the spiritual life. I understand that change has been the theme of worship this month. And so I'd like to share a little bit about some Buddhist perspectives on impermanence and joy. The core of Buddhist practice is to clarify and experiment with the path to the end of suffering. And change, for a lot of us, is a big source of suffering. So in Buddhist practice, we look seriously at how we might meet impermanence. Back in the time of Buddha, around 6th century BCE, Pisigatami came from a poor family. But the son of a wealthy family loved her and married her. Unfortunately, her in-laws treated her unkindly because of her background. But when she gave birth to a son, they finally respected her. Then when the son was a toddler, he died. And Pisigatami went mad with grief. She carried the dead child from house to house, begging for medicine to make him well. And everyone sent her away saying, "The child's dead. No medicine can help him." And at last, a kind person directed her to the Buddha. And the Buddha said, "I'll give you medicine to revive your child if you bring me a mustard seed from the house where no one has died." So with renewed hope, Pisigatami went forth to get the mustard seed. But at everyone's house, she learned that someone had died. And so, still carrying her child's body in her arms, she returned to the Buddha. "Would you bring me a mustard seed?" he asked her. And she replied, "I thought that death had happened only to my little son. Now I see it happens to everyone. Impermanence is everywhere." Pisigatami buried her child in the forest and returned to the Buddha to receive ordination. Okay, hopefully that'll be ready. So, impermanence, right? Everything in our life just keeps changing. Our quality of life keeps changing. Lately, we've noticed prices going up, service going down, supply is not as available. Our technology keeps changing, our climate, our culture. And it's not just the wider world that keeps changing. Each of us keeps changing too. My body's slowing down. It's getting achy. And despite how certain I am about everything, my opinions and perspectives keep changing too. My emotions constantly rising and passing away. The Buddha observed just as many diverse winds blow back and forth across the sky, easterly winds, westerly winds, northerly and southerly winds, gusty winds, gustless, sometimes cold, sometimes hot, some are strong, others mild. Winds of many kinds, so in this very body, all varieties of feelings arise, pleasant ones, painful ones, neutral ones. So as my body, my perspectives, my emotions all shift around, who I am just keeps unraveling, reconstituting. And it's not just me, each of you too, and everyone all around us. All our bodies are changing, all our opinions are shifting, all our feelings are blowing hot and cold. And because we're all in the process of changing, all our relationships are in flux as well. Things keep being different with how we connect with our partners, our families, our coworkers, our friends. And so on we go, searching from house to house. Is there anyone who has not experienced this great flood of impermanence? Is there anyone who can give me a mustard seed so I can go get the medicine to relieve this endless stream of change? The Buddha said, there persists a law. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. In other words, all phenomena, everything is shifting all the time because the underlying conditions are changing all the time. And this means I can't count on any stability in the world, in this country, in this community. I can't be certain about the future of my home or livelihood or relationships. I can't even pin down a reliable picture of me. Now, if we are to be honest about this state of affairs, for the most part, we just don't like it. So we humans, being the way humans are, we have a few default ways of meeting this reality of impermanence. You know, sometimes we just don't see it. Our habit is to believe that things are more or less stable. You know, I'm going to be in this job for 20 years. We'll be married till the day I die. This democracy will persist. Our friendship will persist. My garden will persist. The Buddha said of this tendency, one is immersed in ignorance, insofar as one will say of what is actually impermanent that it's permanent, or that one will say of what is actually unstable that it's stable. So in the face of impermanence, sometimes we're ignorant, sometimes we just don't see it. Another way we meet impermanence is that sometimes we resist it. You know, we know what's going on, how everything keeps changing, whether we like it or not, but we want to live our lives. And so we forge ahead, hoping for the best. You know, things are stable enough for me to build a home, or certain enough for me to raise a family. My livelihood's reliable enough for me to make some plans. So even though we know things keep shifting, sometimes we just say, no, I can beat the odds. I'm going to hold everything together in a stable way and just move ahead as best I can. And then sometimes in the face of impermanence, we just do our best to avoid it. I think of this avoidance as gliding along in a daze, bypassing the complex mystery of what it means to live a human life. It's a dampening of life, trying to skate past the unpleasant experiences in the vain hope of maintaining an endless string of pleasant experiences. This trying to bypass the reality of impermanence might look like using intoxicants, you know, drugs, alcohol, the internet, social media, TV. All these things we use to sedate the experience and shield us from temporary unpleasantness associated with change. Might even look like intellectual gymnastics, theories, justifications, excuses that we use to try to explain away the unpleasantness of change. And it might even look like spiritual practice to the extent that we dismiss rather than step into the realities of change. So where does this leave us? On the one hand, the Buddha taught, and we can really tell by our own experience, that everything's unstable, uncertain, unreliable. And on the other hand, often we don't register the reality of this change. And when we do, we resist it or we avoid it. But in the middle, we know from our experience that there are real life consequences to these usual ways of meeting impermanence, right? This is not just a philosophical conversation. We get frustrated when things aren't stable. We get distressed when our resistance to change is futile. And we even go so far as to bypass or dampen the fullness of our human experience just to avoid meeting the new conditions that are unfolding today. So these consequences are all genuine burdens, right? They're concrete ways that we humans suffer. Now, fortunately, our default responses are not the only ways for us to meet the reality of impermanence. We're not limited to ignorance, resistance, and avoidance. In Buddhist teachings, I see at least a few suggestions for how we might make some space for joy to arise in the stream of endless change. So first, we can practice noticing instability everywhere. And the Buddha suggested that simply by noticing how everything arises, changes, fades away, we can experience a certain joy. He said, when by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away, and end of forms and sensations and mind objects, when one sees as it actually is that these things are all impermanent and suffering and subject to change, then joy arises. For me, meditation practice provides a great opportunity to practice noticing how instability is all around. And when I pay attention, I can see in my own self, physical sensations get stronger and then fade. Preferences get stronger and fade. Thoughts arise and disappear. Feelings pass through, blowing hot and cold, like the winds. And over time, this practice of sustaining attention on how things keep shifting, it's been changing how I meet everything that life brings my way. I'm not sure if I'd call it joy, but there's definitely a little bit more ease as I bump into the realities of impermanence. And meditation isn't the only way to cultivate this awareness. For example, Zen teacher Jan Chosen Bays suggests this exercise. She says several times a day, when someone's talking to you, just remind yourself, this person could die tonight. This may be the last time I'm with them. And then notice any changes in how you listen, speak, and interact with this person. And she says, of course, we don't want to fill our mind with constant anxious thoughts about mortality, but an awareness of impermanence can help us cherish the people we encounter every day. So one possibility to create some space for joy is to notice instability everywhere. Get familiar with it and let it inform the quality of our engagement with the world. A second way to make some space for joy and impermanence is to welcome the fluctuations lightly. Being an ordinary human being means that we have all sorts of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral experiences. And these are always fluctuating, right? Pleasant experiences. They eventually disappear or go sour. And so we can welcome them lightly. Unpleasant experiences eventually disappear or improve. So welcome them lightly. And even neutral experiences, they disappear or get worse or get better. So we can welcome them light. 800 years ago, Eihi Dogen, the head of the Japanese lineage of Zen Buddhism, taught, constantly being an ordinary person is impermanence. Constantly being an ordinary person is impermanence. And so, being ordinary people, enveloped in this swirl of endless change, we might practice welcoming the fluctuations lightly. Right? Not clinging, not pushing away, not avoiding, just holding the hands open. And this relaxed receptiveness to impermanence can bring a joy of a different texture. A third way we might find some ease in impermanence is to relax the business of self. In other words, we can practice easing up on all the work of trying to maintain a certain sense of I and me and mine. If everything, including our very self, is always changing, we can relax a little, not be so concerned about maintaining the fiction of a me, that I envision, that needs to be a certain way. And there's some relief, some joy in that easing up. The Buddha spoke about all the things we do to maintain our sense of self. And he said, friends, these 8 worldly concerns spin after the world, and the world spins after them. Gain and loss, status and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. These 8 concerns arise for everyone. But when one works with these concerns skillfully, one reflects on how each condition that arises is impermanent and subject to change. One sees all these things as they really are, and they do not consume the heart-mind. And thus one neither elates with gain nor rebels against loss. One neither elates with status nor rebels against disgrace. Neither elates with praise nor rebels against blame. Neither elates with pleasure nor rebels against pain. He continues, as one releases these likes and dislikes, one is released from birth, old age, and death. From sorrow, lamentation, pain, and anguish, one is released from suffering. So again, a joy of a different texture is available as we loosen our concern with all the shifting pieces that we use to prop up our sense of I and me and mine. Not just our changing bodies and thoughts and feelings, but our changing fortune and status and reputation. So in the face of impermanence, we can relax, breathe out all this business of self. A fourth way into the joy of impermanence is to practice watching for serendipities. Practice being alert for unexpected joys that can surface at any time because things are always changing. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, understanding impermanence can give us confidence, peace, and joy. Impermanence does not necessarily lead to suffering. Without impermanence, life could not be. Your daughter could not grow up into a beautiful young woman. Oppressive political regimes would never change. Impermanence is what makes transformation possible. We should learn to say, long live impermanence. And our ancestor Dogen suggested, keep your mind on impermanence. Do not forget that this world is transient and that human life is precarious. But do not be preoccupied with reflecting on the impermanence of the world. Determined to regard the Dharma, this reality, as weighty, and your body and life as lightly weighted. So we can practice with impermanence by being alert for unexpected joys, keeping ourselves lightly weighted, keeping the door open to people changing and circumstances changing, in wonderful ways that we weren't looking for. Watch for serendipities. And then lastly, a wonderful way to step into impermanence with joy is to boldly create new conditions. In other words, we can practice acting wholeheartedly, unabashedly, right in the face of change and uncertainty. We're not bystanders in this whirlwind of impermanence. With every action, we create new conditions that contribute to how life will unfold, at home, in work, in the community, in the world. The Buddha taught, we are of the nature to grow old, get sick, and die. There's no way to escape this. And everything and everyone that's dear to me is of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are the only thing that carry on with consequence. Now, a hazard of paying close attention to impermanence is that we might imagine that nothing really matters because it's all going to change anyway. But of course, we do have real everyday lives, right, where things do matter. And if we just bypass problems, then difficulties and sufferings will pile up. So acknowledging the reality of impermanence does not require denying the reality of everyday life. We know from experience that both are true. And so, in the face of change and uncertainty, we take the radical step to act boldly, right? To move the levers that we can move in this complex system of life. Not only is this a way for us to live with some freedom and ease, it's a way for us to throw some catalysts into the swirl. Maybe, the future might unfold with a little more freedom and ease for everyone, for all beings. In Zen practice, we take up this challenge by committing to practice a variety of precepts, and particularly the 10 grave precepts, which is one of the core pieces of our vowed life. And I hear them like this, and they all feel just sort of a bit daring to me in the face of impermanence. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to proceed in peace and not cause harm. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to be satisfied with what I have, not take what belongs to others. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to respect intimate relationships, not treat others carelessly. I vow to speak truthfully and not lie. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to be fully present and not escape through intoxicants. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to speak kindly, not speak of others' faults and errors. I vow to observe non-difference, not elevate self or blame others. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to be generous, not stingy. I vow to transform anger to wisdom and not spin in stories. In the face of uncertainty and change, I vow to include all in the scope of wholeness and disparage nothing. Boldly create new conditions. So, after searching far and wide, coming home with no mustard seed, receiving no medicine to relieve this endless stream of change, how might we proceed with some genuine joy? Our teachers suggest we experiment with at least these few practices. Notice instability everywhere. Welcome the fluctuations lightly. Relax the business of self. Watch for serendipities and boldly create new conditions. Thank you, everyone, for your practice.